Mark Carney just admitted the globalist world order is gone. What forced his confession? Donald Trump's historic breakthrough in Asia, deals with Xi Jinping and other leaders that completely bypass the British imperial system. So here's what the Canadian Prime Minister said.
Today, we're facing another hinge moment in history. Our world is undergoing one of the most profound shifts since the fall of the Berlin Wall. And that old world, the world in which APEC prospered, but also helped to foster, that old world of steady expansion of rules-based liberalized trade and investment, a world on which so much of our nation's prosperity, very much Canada's included, that world is gone.
Think about that. The man the British Empire sent to Asia to counter Trump just said it out loud. Trump left us in the dust. But here's what the establishment doesn't want you to know. Trump faces more resistance at home than abroad. And that domestic resistance, that's the real battle for 2026. I'm Susan Kokinda. I've been fighting to revive the real American economics since the 1970s. But I've seen how British economics, free trade, globalism, environmentalism have spread like an infection, and it's almost killed us until Donald Trump came along and started to administer the cure. So if this sounds like your kind of fight, please hit the like and share buttons so we can spread our reach on YouTube. Today, I'm going to show you why Trump's biggest threat isn't Beijing or Moscow. It's in the U.S., among Republicans who don't understand his revolution, or worse, oppose it. And second, I'll reveal exactly what Trump did in Asia that has the British in full panic mode, and how that is the key to victory. So let me start with an uncomfortable truth. Americans do love Trump's economic populism, but they don't associate it with the Republican Party. And I think you can figure out what that means for 2026. A recent Rasmussen poll exposed this dangerous gap. Here's the question they asked people. Economic populism is a political and economic approach that emphasizes growth and income distribution, often opposing the perceived elites in favor of the interests of the common people. Do you agree or disagree that America needs more economic populism? The result? 58% said yes. And take note, that's to more economic populism. And 46% call Trump's economic performance good or excellent. In other words, he's delivering. But here's the problem. When asked which party will deliver economic populism, 46% said the Democrats, that's the blue bar, and only 26% said Republicans, that's the red bar in the middle. The way the Rasmussen pollster Mark Mitchell put it is, Trump is out on the battlefield all by himself. Why? Because below Trump's cabinet level, most Republicans still don't understand what Trump is doing. They're reading from the old Contract with America playbook, protecting free markets and the financial bubble at the expense of our physical economy. They don't get that Trump is not focused on accounting. He's focused on growing the real economy, using the tools of the American system of Hamilton, Lincoln, and McKinley. Rasmussen calls it economic populism because its real name, the American system, was buried by the British, who replaced it with the Austrian and Chicago schools of libertarianism. Those are both British imports designed to straitjacket physical production in the world of money, money, money. Now, that is a very good reason to subscribe to Promethean Action's newsletter. We've been leading the fight to resurrect the American system for longer than Donald Trump has been president. So head on over to Promethean Action and subscribe to our free newsletter. Because unless more Americans really understand what Trump is doing and start holding Republicans' feet to the fire, we're going to get more of what happened in the Senate last week, and I'm not talking about just the Democrats. The Senate voted a resolution to cripple Trump's ability to deploy tariffs. 4 Republican senators voted with the Democrats against the president. 3 rhinos and a libertarian, Mitch McConnell, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, and Rand Paul. Now that resolution is going to die in the House, but it shows why only a quarter of Americans think that the Republican Party can deliver economic nationalism. And it isn't just 4 senators. It's the Chamber of Commerce, the Wall Street Journal, the Koch family's Americans for Prosperity, and all the bigs, big pharma, ag, tech, banking, etc. They've been on the globalist gravy train, and they're the ones who have financed the old Republican Party. But here's the good news that terrifies the global elite. Trump is building a completely new coalition, one that doesn't have to rely on the Republican wing of the Uniparty. And one key component of that new coalition is labor. We've seen two big breaks this week from major trade unions over the shutdown fight. They are challenging the Democrats and telling them to pass a clean continuing resolution and open the government. First, it was the AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees, which represents 800,000 federal workers. And then on October 30th, Teamster President Sean O'Brien showed up at the White House with J.D. Vance and Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy and basically told the Democrats to cut the crap.
Look, the bottom line, and we took a position, I represent 1.3 million working men and women in this country for the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. We took a position 3 weeks ago. Pass a clean CR, get to the table, negotiate a deal. Do not put working people in the middle of a problem they should not be in there. And we got to think about the families that are going to be affected. Think about when you have to tell your son or daughter they can't play sports because you're not getting paid. Think about when you can't pay your mortgage. Think about when you can't pay your tuition. Put the politics aside, get to the table, negotiate a deal, pass a clean CR right now, and then figure out the problems moving forward.
So the Teamsters at the White House with a Republican vice president. This is the realignment. Blue-collar workers, union members, people from lower income brackets, they're turning to Trump. They've had it with the lunatic Democrats, and they see that Trump is the real deal when it comes to the economy. Now, Democrats are trying to stop this with chaos operations. That's why Soros-funded groups like Indivisible are pressuring the Senate Democrats to fight like hell and keep the government closed. But it's not working. The realignment is happening anyway, and Trump is fulfilling the pledge to the Republican Party platform that says, quote, the Republican Party must return to its roots as the party of industry, manufacturing, infrastructure, and workers. Trump gets it, but most of the rest of the party doesn't, which is why the Rasmussen pollster said the GOP is outmatched and off the field while Trump fights alone.
What I'm looking at is the strategic picture, and the strategic picture tells us the Republicans are hopelessly outmatched for what's coming, and they are not even on the battlefield.
We need more Republicans talking about what Trump and Scott Bessent and Howard Lutnick and Chris Wright and Promethean Action are talking about. Building things, investing in productive infrastructure, using tariffs to bring manufacturing home, creating millions of skilled trade jobs, and producing hundreds and hundreds of new nuclear plants. And until that gap closes, Trump is vulnerable going into 2026, because if Republicans lose Congress, the British win, and they'll strangle Trump's resolution. So how does Trump outflank this domestic weakness? The answer lies in what he just accomplished in Asia. Deals that bypass the entire British imperial system and prove that economic nationalism works. But the Asia trip wasn't just about economics. Because in truth, Donald Trump took a wrecking ball to 100 years of British geopolitics. Now, in the midweek update, Barbara reviewed the first leg of Trump's Asia trip, the bilateral deals in Southeast Asia, then with Japan and South Korea. Those deals include historic agreements on rare earths, shipbuilding, and nuclear power, all accomplished by wielding tariffs to spread economic nationalism, which is why Carney admitted that the world of the rules-based, liberalized trade was gone. But the stunner for the British is what Trump did with China. Now, to really understand the full import of the Trump-Xi summit, look at what the Council on Foreign Relations has been focused on, the U.S. role in China. Now, don't forget, the Council on Foreign Relations is the American arm of the old British Roundtable. On October 21st, two refugees from Biden's national security team published an article entitled, "The New Eurasian Order, America Must Link Its Atlantic and Pacific Strategies," where they lay out a desperate strategy to keep the United States in the geopolitical fold of perpetual superpower conflict. That is, the U.S. and the democracies against China and Russia. But like Carney, they have to admit they're losing. They worry that, quote, the United States appears to be dispensing with a trans-regional approach. Now, trans-regional means you operate within the globalist rules-based order. And as one example, they report that the British were prepared to send an aircraft carrier to the Indo-Pacific earlier this year to do some saber rattling against China. U.S. Defense Undersecretary Elbridge Colby delivered the message, stay out, we don't want you here. Because Trump is not interested in British-run security or economic blocs in Asia any more than in Europe. He wants to deal nation to nation with China, and he did. Trump diffused the rare earth embargo threat, made progress on curtailing fentanyl, and arranged major Chinese soybean purchases over 3 years in exchange for reducing tariffs on China. And over again, he stressed his great relationship with Xi Jinping and how both countries will benefit. Now, the CFR and the British were counting on keeping the geopolitical great game going, playing the United States and China off against each other. But without America and China, and for that matter, Russia playing along, the great game isn't so great. Here's how Treasury Secretary Bessent analyzed the new situation.
So the two leaders were able to discuss more bigger picture ideas during the conversation, including what the remainder of President Trump's term would look like, because I think the Chinese realize that with President Trump in office, it is an opportunity to reset the relationship in terms of mutual respect.
That's not how the great game is played. They want to create permanent tensions, keep everyone dependent on the international order controlled by London and Wall Street. And Trump is saying, no thanks. Instead of containing China, he made deals that serve American interests, and he diffused the tensions. Now apply some of those same lessons to Russia. Last week, Trump posted a media post saying we should resume nuclear testing. The anti-war crowd had a fit. But what did Trump say when he was pressed on this?
Do you worry that we're entering a more risky environment when it comes to nuclear issues?
No, I don't think so. I think we have it pretty well locked up. But we have more than anybody. But I see them testing. I say, well, if they're going to test, I guess we have to test. I'd like to see a denuclearization because we have so many, and Russia has some. Russia's second, and China's third, and China will catch up within 4 or 5 years. I think de-escalation would be, they would call it denuclearization, would be a tremendous thing.
That's what Trump really wants. He wants denuclearization. Instead of permanent confrontation with Russia, he talks about denuclearization. And as Russian envoy Kirill Dmitriev stressed in his recent U.S. visit, mutual economic benefit, like the long-proposed Bering Straits tunnel. Bessent threw out another great project benefiting many nations.
In terms of the Japanese buying Russian oil, they buy, I think, a substantial amount of LNG, about 10% of their needs from Russia. And I believe over time they will be weaning off of that, and they will be part of a very large pipeline project that the U.S. is constructing in Alaska. The Koreans may be part of it. And President Xi unilaterally in the meeting today brought up that the Chinese might like to be part of it.
Think about that. Pipelines which will benefit Japan, Korea, and China in Alaska, and tunnels with Russia. Indeed, the old order is over. So let's bring it back to 2026. Trump is delivering real economic progress for the American people. That's what the Asia trip was about. And if Americans rediscover their heritage as builders, and we use this to kick the Republican Party into the MAGA world, we'll lay the basis for the big wins we need in 2026. This is why Promethean Action exists. We're educating the new Republican coalition because most Republicans, again, below the cabinet level, don't get economic nationalism. That's what makes Trump vulnerable in 2026. We're organizing in key states to build a MAGA base that understands Trump's revolution. So join Promethean Action, become a paying member. We'll educate you so you can help build this new Republican coalition. We have to hold on to Congress, or everything Trump accomplished will be strangled by the uniparty and its controllers, the globalist British imperial system. Trump has just ended 100 years of British geopolitics abroad. The deals are done. The old order is over. But we have to end imperial economic thinking at home, because if we don't build a Republican Party worthy of this moment, the British will win by default in 2026 using their media, their think tanks, their Soros-funded chaos operations, and they could retake Congress, unless we stop them. Because the future of our republic depends on citizens who understand the real fight and are out there on the front lines so that President Trump is not alone.